Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Lead Center's webinar, Workforce and Bank Partnerships, A Tale of Three Workforce Boards. We are so glad to have you with us today. During today's webinar, you will learn about the Community Reinvestment Act, or CRA, a law passed in 1977 as a response to banks' redlining practices to encourage financial institutions to conduct activities, including workforce development-related activities, that benefit individuals with low and moderate incomes. You will hear about various strategies to build capacity within the workforce system to leverage bank investments in disability employment for individuals, primarily people of color, who have low and moderate incomes. Today's webinar is hosted by the Lead Center, which stands for Leadership for the Employment and Economic Advancement of People with Disabilities. For those of you who may be new to the Lead Center, we are a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, policy development center. The Lead Center is led by Social Policy Research Associates and National Disability Institute, and is funded by the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor. The mission of the Lead Center is to promote innovation in policy, employment, and economic advancement to support individual and systems level change for all people with disabilities. Next slide, please. My name is Mahika Rangnicker, and I am an associate at Social Policy Research Associates. I am delighted to serve as the moderator for today's webinar. Next slide. So that everyone can fully participate in today's webinar, we'd like to take a moment to share some captioning and housekeeping tips. Today's webinar is live captioned. If you would like to hide captions, click the live transcript button to find the hide captions option. You can also adjust the caption size under the subtitle settings option. You also have the option to open the captioning webpage in a new browser. The link will be posted in the chat box. You can adjust the background color, text color, and font using the drop-down menus at the top of the browser. Position the window to sit on top of the embedded captioning. Next slide, please. If you have content questions for our presenters, and we do encourage you to ask them, please type them into the Q&A panel, and we will save time at the end for questions and answers. If your question is not content related, for example, you need tech support, use the chat box instead. Next slide. To kick off our day today, we would like to welcome the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, Jennifer Sheehy. Prior to her current position, Deputy Assistant Secretary Sheehy spent 10 years at the U.S. Department of Education in many roles, including Acting Director of the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research and Acting Deputy Commissioner of the Rehabilitation Services Administration. Deputy Assistant Secretary Sheehy was also a senior policy advisor on the Presidential Task Force on Employment of Adults with Disabilities and served in detail as Associate Director in the White House Domestic Policy Council. Deputy Assistant Secretary Sheehy, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much, Mahika. I'm particularly thrilled about this topic today because I have an MBA, and this kind of information, particularly increasing financial literacy, really excites me. As Mahika said, I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Disability Employment Policy, or ODEP. I'm a middle-aged white woman with shoulder-length reddish blonde hair, and I'm wearing a black sweater. I also use a wheelchair. For those of you who are not familiar with ODEP, Congress established us about 21 years ago to create a federal agency dedicated to working across programs and agencies to improve policies that increase the number and quality of jobs for those of us with disabilities. Today's webinar addresses two of ODEP's priorities: increasing financial empowerment for people with disabilities and equity. You will hear 3 stories from workforce development boards who partnered with banks to increase financial empowerment for people with disabilities. These 3 workforce boards are being featured today because they have also committed to serving communities that have historically been marginalized. These workforce boards increased financial literacy in different ways. Some opted to provide financial coaching and credit assistance, while others are working on building financial industry career pathways for individuals with disabilities of color. I want to alert you about a couple of exciting resources that ODEP, along with 8 other federal agencies, just released last month. The joint communication to state and local governments called Resource Leveraging and Service Coordination to Increase Competitive Integrated Employment for Individuals with Disabilities, and accompanying frequently asked questions document explain how state agencies can blend, braid, and sequence resources to more efficiently serve common customers. These resources demonstrate that blending, braiding, and sequencing are viable strategies to help people with disabilities attain and retain employment. Blending, braiding, or sequencing may even provide a creative strategy to support financial empowerment of people with disabilities. I hope you will check out these wonderful resources if you haven't already. I also want to alert you that next week is the start of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or as we call it, NDEAM. NDEAM is celebrated every October, and this year's NDEAM theme, disability, part of the equity equation, fits perfectly with this webinar. From day one, this administration has demonstrated a strong commitment to increasing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA. When President Biden issued his executive order on DEIA in the federal workforce, we were thrilled to see how thoroughly disability was specifically included in the broader DEI efforts. Our work has never been more important. The pandemic has fundamentally changed the way we interact and reaffirmed the need for strong connections with each other and with the communities that have made us who we are, a diverse people. Before I hand the virtual microphone back to Mahika, I want to take a moment to thank the Lead Center for their support in putting on this webinar today. Not only are they hosting the webinar, but they also do countless things behind the scenes to ensure that this webinar and so many other events run smoothly. Thank you very much, Lead. And of course, I want to thank my colleagues for the passion and dedication they bring to their ODEP work every day. With that, I hope everyone is looking forward to ending, and I will turn it back over to you, Mahika.
Thank you, Deputy Assistant Secretary Sheehy, for that welcome and for highlighting the importance of centering equity in efforts to increase financial empowerment for people with disabilities. Next slide, please. Our presenters today are subject matter experts and seasoned workforce professionals who will share their activities to engage banks to provide financial coaching, workforce training, credit assistance, career preparation, and other activities for adults and youth. First, we will hear from my colleague at the Lead Center, Doug Keast, project manager at the National Disability Institute. Since 1979, Doug has worked as a practitioner and technical assistance provider on multiple levels in the areas of employment and disability. In particular, he has supported the development of local workforce investment boards and facilitated strategic planning and MOU development between boards and the service entities in their communities. Next, we will hear from Amanda Sutherland. For the past 5 years, Amanda has been the Administrator of Workforce Development for Kalamazoo RESA, where she supports the MichiganWorks system. She has 21 years of professional experience with accomplishments in workforce development, marketing, business development, employee management and training, business planning, and budget analysis. Then we will hear from Brian Williams, the Executive Director of the Capital Region Workforce Development Board in Albany, New York. Brian has over 20 years of experience in the workforce development field, assisting youth, adults, and businesses, and serves on several community boards. And finally, representing CareerSource Broward in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, we have Nadine Jackson, the one-stop operator, and Douglas Saenz, the business services manager. Nadine has been the one-stop operator for CareerSource Broward since 2019. Prior to that, she worked for CareerSource Broward as a senior program manager, overseeing the 3 one-stop managers. Doug is the business services manager for hospitality, retail, and small business at CareerSource Broward, working with employers and industry organizations to promote talent recruitment, training, and retention. He also serves as a trainer in a leadership development program, preparing individuals for leadership roles. Next slide, please. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, Congress passed a law in 1977 to address banks' redlining practices and encourage financial institutions to conduct activities, including workforce development-related activities that benefit individuals with low and moderate incomes. These activities can take many forms, from the development of financial services career pathways training to financial education conducted by bank employees. After today's session, you will have a framework for developing partnerships with banks. You will understand how banks can work with workforce systems to address workforce development objectives and increase the financial capability of workforce customers. And you will hear the experiences of 3 workforce systems in their efforts to establish bank partnerships. I will now turn it over to Doug, who will talk more about the framework for developing bank partnerships. Next slide.
Thank you, Mahika and Deputy Assistant Secretary Sheehy for this great opening and welcome. It's very exciting to be here today to share this tale of 3 workforce systems. As we recognize that workforce development boards often identify specific populations for increased emphasis for inclusion in workforce services, the LEAD Center conducted outreach to determine how systems engaged in partnerships with banks to address local interests and priorities. As a part of this outreach, 3 different workforce systems in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Albany, New York, and Fort Lauderdale, Florida, offered to learn with our team how to effectively engage in new partnerships with banks for mutual benefit. The focus of these partnerships in all 3 areas were to engage individuals in low and moderate income, or LMI communities, especially people of color with disabilities, in activity designed to increase their overall financial wellness and career path opportunities. Next slide, please. Of course, the value of partnership with workforce systems for banks is half of the equation. This partnership is relevant to a bank's overall interest in the economic growth of communities in which they operate, but another part lies with their community development interests and responsibilities under the law called the Community Reinvestment Act, or CRA. Congress passed this law, as Mahika had said, in 1977 to address banks' discriminatory lending practices, primarily against people of color. In a practice known as redlining, banks identified low-income communities by drawing a red line around them on a map and excluded people who lived in these communities from obtaining credit, loans, and other types of investments. This activity was a major contributor to the lack of opportunity experienced by families in communities of color in many cities in their building of businesses, careers, and their own financial health and wealth. With the CRA, though, banks are encouraged and get credit for conducting activities to increase the financial health of individuals with low and moderate incomes, including people of color with disabilities. These activities can take many forms, ranging from the development and provision of financial education and services to increase the financial capability of people in these neighborhoods, to workforce development activities in the form of career pathway development, training, and placement to engage individuals with low incomes in satisfying living wage careers. Next slide, please. In the course of our outreach and time with the good folks in Kalamazoo, Albany, and Fort Lauderdale, we created the following framework for developing bank partnerships. The first strategy is to engage a bank representative on the Workforce Development Board. Many workforce boards around the country already do this, as there are many areas of common focus for banks and workforce systems, including economic growth and community development. Banks also have an interest in this activity because, well, they can receive CRA credit for the time that they spend on the board activities. As your system starts to develop an initiative to establish partnerships with banks, we recommend that you include leaders from organizations focused on equity for communities of color and the inclusion of people with disabilities. By including these organizations from the outset, you will ensure a strong focus on the communities that the CRA law intends to empower. Have partners who can help guide your initiative and ultimately strengthen your community impact. We also encourage you to connect with national bank partnership initiatives if they are active in your community. This may save you a lot of time, as they have existing connections with banks and robust programs. Bank On provides unbanked and underbanked individuals and families with asset building banking access, consumer financial protection, and financial education and counseling. MichiganWorks provides young adults with training for entry-level positions in banking, as well as work experience, coaching, and placement into careers in the financial industry. There are a couple of regulatory organizations that monitor the lion's share of the banks nationally related to CRA. These are the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC. In their roles, these regulators are enthusiastic in their support and encouragement with bank partnerships with community agencies that strengthen the impact of CRA activity. Identifying and engaging representatives from those organizations for consultation with your outreach activity with banks in your area will open doors and improve your pitch to banks. Next slide, please. As you become knowledgeable about the Community Reinvestment Act, discuss partnership opportunities that will generate CRA credit for banks as you have opportunities to meet with them. If you don't have a history of partnership activity with banks, it's advisable to start small with partnership opportunities and look for growth in the scope of activity over time. In many areas of the country, bank CRA officers have established affiliations and meet on a regular basis to support each other in their CRA activities. Establishing a connection with these groups where they exist is a great way to fast track your opportunity to share your partnership ideas with banks. And finally, your ability to identify income status and project activity impact for participants are important to banks for their ability to report impact of activity for CRA purposes. Your ability to do this should be included in your conversations with banks, as it will pique their interest. Each of these items in this framework are relevant in gaining and maintaining bank partnerships. We will release a how-to guide providing more details soon on the Lead Center website. And now it is my pleasure to turn this discussion back over to Mahika.
Thank you, Doug, for laying the groundwork for our conversation today. As Deputy Assistant Secretary Sheehy mentioned in her welcoming remarks, this is a critical effort given the pandemic's disproportionate impact on individuals with disabilities, primarily people of color, in communities that are low and moderate income, and coming at a time when the Biden administration issued an executive order on DEIA across the federal government. And Doug, like you said, this is a moment to reflect on the intersectionality of race, injustice, poverty, and disability, and build and expand opportunities to positively impact the financial inclusion and stability of people of color with disabilities in communities that are primarily low and moderate income. So now, the moment that I'm sure you've all been waiting for, we're going to hear directly from 3 local workforce boards on how they engaged individuals in communities with low and moderate incomes, including people of color with disabilities, in activities that were designed to increase overall financial wellness. Next slide, please. First, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Sutherland, who will be talking about MichiganWorks Southwest's experiences in connecting with banks and new partnerships through the CRA pilot. And remember, if you have any questions for our presenters today, please do ask them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to that towards the end of the webinar. So Amanda, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mahika, and thank you to the Lead Center for inviting me here today. So I wanted to share with you how we were approached and this experience that we had through the Lead Center in engaging in a financial literacy program. So at MichiganWorks Southwest, we do serve an adult population with career exploration at the forefront. And with that, we know that that bleeds right into the work that we're doing through this, this program, through financial literacy, that those two things go hand in hand. So when the Lead Center came to us asking, you know, is this something you'd like to participate? We said, we're all in. But what does that mean? What are you looking for us to do? And they said, the sky is wide open. So we dove deep into some of the services that we already provide across 4 counties that we serve. And we said, you know what, we do an excellent job with a workshop series that we have created over the course of many, many years that we provide both in person and virtually. And we said, okay, let's explore how we can use our current knowledge and how we share these workshops, anything from resume building to interviewing techniques to advocacy among the workplace, in building in a financial literacy workshop series. We know that we're not the experts at MichiganWorks on financial literacy. So we said, let's poke around. What partners do we have? What kind of leadership from the Lead Center can we dive into to explore connecting with CRA officers in our communities? And lo and behold, we discovered that Southwest Michigan actually has a CRA association. So that was an easy, low-hanging fruit that we could grab onto and reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking to, grab your ear and grab your expertise around financial literacy. And we're inviting you into our space to connect with individuals across the 4 counties we serve and provide financial literacy coupled with a career exploration. Next slide. So the bigger picture, though, is we also needed to say, okay, we don't want to do this on our own. We want feedback from some folks that might already be doing it, feedback from other partnerships that we already have in the community. So along with connecting with social policy research associates and the National Disability Institute, along with myself and a few others from Kalamazoo, RESA, and MichiganWorks Southwest, we reached out to a couple individuals you can see here from Michigan Rehabilitation Services, a neighborhood employability program called the Neighborhood Hubs, as well as a financial literacy program that we already had at CareerSource. And we said, what are you guys already doing? What do you see in the communities that they need more of? And so this was our advisory team. We included this advisory team on almost at first on a weekly basis, and then almost like every few weeks, we said, okay, this is what we're creating. This is what we're seeing from the CRA officers as what they can provide in partnership with us. Do you see this as something that your communities and those that you serve would be interested in? And they said, absolutely. So we engaged a leadership advisory team throughout the course of this entire summer when we provided this workshop series. Next slide, please. So through that advisory team, we also said, what are the outcomes? We're not just going to do this, to throw some ideas out there. What do we want to see from this and make it very intentional in the information that we're providing into our communities? And one, obviously, is to provide that financial literacy opportunities for underserved communities. As Doug had mentioned before, there is, that the redlining that has been going on for years and years. And we wanted to make sure that everyone has information for financial wealth and health. We serve 4 counties here in Southwest Michigan. So we wanted to make sure that we're engaged in all 4 of those communities. And we did that through online services as well as in person to make sure that those folks are building long-term financial growth. And then additionally, we wanted to grow relationships between workforce development and local bank partners. For many years, we have connected in certain ways with some credit unions, but knowing that there's this bigger picture with banks and the heart that they want to pour into the communities, we said, absolutely, let's start making those local banking connections in our local area. Next slide, please. So what did that look like? How did we develop the series? There's the plan 1 and the plan 2. So plan 1, we developed a dual workshop series. So what we have is we have career coaches at MichiganWorks Southwest that meet one-on-one and do deep dives into people's career goals. And so we enlisted those career coaches to learn more about financial literacy and how we are engaging with the CRA officers. And they got their feet wet with learning about the financial literacy. And what we did is we put together a workshop that we offered on a biweekly basis that just dipped the toe in the water, got people excited about financial literacy and about the CRA officer-led workshops. So we held those on a biweekly basis where people could get some information and say, okay, I'd like to connect in 3 weeks with this upcoming workshop or next week with this workshop. And then those career coaches made sure that they were connected in the right ways to whatever workshops they were or ongoing financial literacy information. Here's a key component. And I know everyone knows, if you feed them, they will come. And so what we did is we explored and we reached out to the CRA Association of Southwest Michigan and said, hey, is there any financial backing you can provide to these next 7, 8, 9 weeks, and say, and allow us to provide food for the individuals that come in person, walk through our doors, and engage in person with the workshops? And they said, absolutely. So they gave us a budget to provide, certain weeks we provided pizza, some weeks it was wings, sometimes it was desserts and drinks, water. And that just enticed people. And in MichiganWorks Southwest, we have a large lobby area with a group of computers where people can just walk in anytime and use those computers for career exploration or anything that they need. And that's a free service. So when they smelled that pizza in the room next door, we would always go out into our lobby and say, hey, we have an upcoming workshop. Come on in, grab a piece of pizza if you'd like to learn about XYZ financial literacy. So we were able to, feed them and they will come. So that was an amazing thing that those banks that we connected with provided to us. So thank you for that financial backing there. Next slide, please. The second piece to our workshop series incorporated the CRA officers. We know that they're the experts. They're the ones that have the great information, and they already had, a lot of PowerPoints already available. They've done these workshops before, so they didn't need to reinvent the wheel. They already had the information ready to provide to us and present with us. So we were the host, they were the experts, and together through that partnership, we had a very engaging workshops. The CRA officers would present, and our co-facilitator, our career coach, would be able to filter questions throughout, and we got feedback at the end, which I will share with you. Some of our feedback from those workshops is that our participants that came to those workshops really liked being able to ask questions and hearing straight from a banking expert right in the moment. They didn't have to wait. They didn't have to walk into a bank. They felt very comfortable in the environment that they were in, knowing that they were getting quality information. You can see here through the CRA officers, we provided a 7-week workshop series, and here's just a few of the banks that engaged in that workshop series. There are many more. We heard that there was a few definitely quick number one hitters. Identity theft was a big one that people really enjoyed, as well as learning about credit scores and then also about how to get out of debt. So I will provide for you in just a minute some of the long-term goals that we have from this experience. Next slide, please. So here is some of the data that we collected. Over those 7 weeks, we did have 57 attendees attend the bank-led workshops, and 23 attendees that attended those kind of toe in the water career coach led shops that were the introduction into our financial literacy series. We were very happy with the amount of attendance. And here's just in these bubbles here were some of the survey feedback that we received. And like I had mentioned before, they really enjoyed the interaction. And I think that's important. It wasn't just somebody talking at them, it's somebody talking with them and providing answers, simple and short and answers that they could understand. And then we could also loop back around with these individuals and provide additional services on the back end. Next slide, please. And to wrap up my presentation today, I wanted to share with you that we took this opportunity to say, hey, what went well, what can we improve on, and how are we going to incorporate this long term? Because it was very much well received, and we really appreciate the Lead Center reaching out to us and including in this important topic to bring workforce development and financial literacy coupled up as a partnership. So we are going to seek out a scholarship program backed by a bank to monetarily sponsor potentially 10 participants to open a secured card to help build credit and get out of debt. We know that secured cards are an opportunity for somebody with no credit or low credit to build credit. And so we are looking for that sponsorship long-term over the next year. And of course, we are going to still incorporate financial literacy into our workshop series long-term and continue to invite banking professionals to be those experts in the industry. And then also making sure that we are providing financial assistance referrals to people in our community and making those connections on several topics below that you can see: first-time home buyers, loan assistance, and seed money. So reaching out to our community, see what's out there, so we can make continued referrals into the community and provide that connection there. So thank you, Mejika, and thank you everyone for listening. Back to you.
Thank you, Amanda. I just want to highlight a couple of things. It was really exciting hearing you share these experiences. And I really appreciated what you said about making connections in your local area. You know, Doug noted how this can be an efficient way to start developing partnerships with financial institutions. And it looks like for MichiganWorks, this resulted in some really impactful CRA presentations. And then also your ability to document and report report the impact that these presentations had on low and moderate income individuals. For example, how you captured direct feedback from your workshop attendees, which is always great. Talking with customers is a great way to determine whether your programs are having the desired impacts, right? So that was exciting, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of all these upcoming activities in this area. So thank you again for that. Next slide, please. I'm now going to invite Brian Williams from Capital Region to share his team's experiences with identifying and forming workforce and bank partnerships. I'll pass it to you, Brian.
Thanks, Mejika, and thanks to U.S. Department of Labor and the LEAD Center for all the work they've done on this, and really for the vision of really connecting the CRA project to the workforce development system. I think it's important that we kind of work on breaking down the barriers between all of the organizations that we work with, and that's something that we kind of pride ourselves here in the Capital Region in New York State to do. Our area is essentially 3 counties. In upstate New York, the capital of New York State. We sponsor 3 of the American Job Centers, 1 in each of our counties. And as I mentioned, you know, convening partnership and collaboration is one thing that I believe we do very well, because, you know, we truly believe that the breaking down of silos between organizations, between projects and everything is really what will empower our communities to move forward. And one of the things that we worked on initially was who should be on our leadership team. Interestingly enough, we actually had to kind of narrow down our original list of who we wanted to be on there because everybody wanted to be a part of this initiative as we talked it through. We were very connected to our local Bank On Coalition, the Cash Coalition, through our Disability Resource Coordinator, who we've had in our career centers for at least 10 years now. We also have a bank and a credit union on our Workforce Development Board. But then also we pulled in our community colleges, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute of why they're important in our project. You know, obviously our community organizations that are embedded right into our urban centers in the cities, our youth and workforce services centers that are doing great work right in the neighborhoods in our urban corridors. And, you know, a lot of our Head Start programs, pulling in the parents that we want to talk about. And we really took an approach of really going in 2 directions in terms of our partnerships. How do we embrace and empower individuals that may be marginalized and may not have been actively participating in the opportunities that we're offering in the area? And how can we reconnect with individuals that may have been involved in our workforce system on the banking side years ago, and how do we pull them back in? And we kind of took a 2-prong approach in terms of what we wanted to look at. We wanted to kind of tackle 2 different things. One being the financial services career pathway, taking advantage, I guess I'll say, of the current labor market and the need for businesses to find skilled workers right now, obviously is huge. And, you know, in having lots of conversations with some of our connections in the banking community through our chambers of commerce and a couple other things, it was very evident that identifying a career pathway from teller on up was something we wanted to tackle. And in talking to folks in the community, we did quite a few focus groups of individuals in our neighborhoods of color, in our LMI populations, in our low-income populations, in our disability populations. And, you know, we kind of talked through what does success look like to you? And what really resonated in a lot of our questions is one thing that folks don't understand the opportunities that are right in front of them or in their own backyard. Quick story, we had one young single mom that was talking about how she had just lost her job at a local convenience store, but she was all proud of herself because she found another job at another convenience store. And we asked the question, have you ever thought about working in a bank? And her response was, I could never do that. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I don't dress well enough to work in a bank. All of these things that we had to kind of almost redirect and say, all your perceptions are not correct on this. So that kind of steered us in this career pathway arena. We also want to take a look at creating new financial empowerment services. As I mentioned, we have a very strong, mature bank-on organization here in our region. And we were looking at different activities and relationships to build on the capacity of the work that they're doing, the great work that they're doing right now, and bring almost a next level to that. Some challenges that we identified, going forward with our progress was having conversations with the banks and who the correct person was to talk to about the career pathways. Historically, folks in the banking industry look at tellers in one bucket and then everybody else in another bucket. And, the traditional recruitment strategy for a majority of the banks was essentially, let's go to our local four-year institutions. We'll hire individuals that have that four-year degree in accounting or in finance, and we'll bring them in at a lower level credit analyst or something like that. And then there's a very specific career pathway from there. But there was that huge chasm between your tellers and your entry-level business service folks, and how do they get to that next level? So that was one of the challenges that we kind of talked through with several banks. We actually have 4 that we've established a really strong relationship, and really just kind of picked their brains about, where can you get your next level of individual from? We didn't want to make this pathway broken like it is right now. And, we talked through, where do we go next in terms of that? And that's why we brought in our community colleges. In New York State, there actually is a registered apprenticeship program for a financial services representative. And, we looked through our state university system, which has been rolling out micro-credentials, which essentially are small bites of a degree program that are for credit. And we're working through now having the banks identify the skill sets that are needed for individuals to move along to the next level, and then bringing that back to the community college and saying, okay, what can we take for the credit courses that are on here that are going to match up with that career pathway and the educational pathway as well? We want to expand essentially that career ladder definition for multiple positions like credit underwriters and other business service folks, and really creating a model to engage the underrepresented populations that we're serving. It's kind of a two-pronged approach from a banking standpoint. They're helping to fill the need that they have in terms of their current workforce and their future workforce, but then in many cases they're going to be getting CRA credit for it as well. So the timing for this project, I think, was perfect for almost tapping into the needs of the banks on that and having them want to participate and partner with us on the whole thing. We have progressed over the last year and having lots of conversations with folks in the banking industry. We had some individuals that are currently in the economic development arena who used to work in the banking industry that are local entrepreneurs themselves. So they were able to make connections to us that we probably couldn't have made on our own. And we've really, articulated the emphasis with all of the banks of raising the standards of living for individuals living in our distressed communities. And really, going back to the folks don't understand what they don't understand, and what they don't know the opportunities are right there. These communities are what banks would consider low and moderate income communities, obviously the target under the CRA, but more importantly than that, this is their future workforce that historically they haven't thought to tap into. And one of the main focuses we wanted to look at was, how do we get into the communities and talk about these opportunities and break down the a knowingness of what it is to work in the banking industry. And creating this pathway in terms of the education piece is our first step. We have one of our banks that's currently looking at our on-the-job training programs for individuals that a year ago they didn't consider ready for this program, but now they're taking a look at this and saying, you know what, we may have excluded individuals that did not have the skill set we were looking for or weren't from our traditional hiring pool. And now that you've brought this to our light, it's important that we take a look at this and put them in a training program that's being developed with our community colleges from that standpoint. You know, the other piece we wanted to look at, like I talked about, was the new financial empowerment services. And, you know, we talked through that with a subgroup of our leadership group, but then it came back to that we needed to take advantage of the career pathways conversation right now. So we are actually using our bank on partners and our financial empowerment services to educate folks on banking terms, for example, as not only empowering them for their own personal finance, but how they can actually get into the banking industry and work in that industry as well. Our next steps in sustainability has been this big piece, because I believe we've made a ton of progress in the last year on this initiative, and we didn't want to essentially drop this right now, obviously, because we're moving so much forward in this, and the banks are ready to move on to the next step. So from a leadership transition, you know, our plan, you know, obviously, you know, Brian and Doug and the team from the Lead Center, you know, was excellent at, you know, helping facilitate us and bring us all together in our busy lives, but we wanted to continue that piece on that. So our local regional economic development organization, Center for Economic Growth, has agreed to take on that role. They are our one-stop system operator in our region, and it totally makes sense. They are also one of our apprenticeship leads for manufacturing industry, and this will essentially bring them into another industry of forming apprenticeship programs as well. We're also looking to outreach to new partners that are serving people of color with disabilities as well. Like I said, we're doing a lot of outreach through our neighborhood associations, through our trusted messengers that are in the community, and really establishing those grassroots efforts to educate folks about opportunities that they may not know where it's going to be. And then finally, as we talked about our career pathways development aspect, there may be some other key partners we want to bring into the fold here, which I think will be important. And, you know, we want to continue the work that we've been doing on this career pathway piece, because it essentially is going to help LMI folks, help individuals with disabilities have pathways that are not just going to end at that teller aspect, that are going to move up through the banking system, and really, you know, establishing that training and workforce experience approach to get forward in the banking. So thank you, Mahika. I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for sharing those experiences. It was really great to hear how you're attending to different types of individuals in the workforce system. So you mentioned wanting to support and empower several different communities, right? Including people of color, including people with disabilities who may not be involved in the workforce system right now for a variety of reasons, you know, including being historically kept out of certain careers and industries, perhaps. And you also mentioned wanting to reconnect with individuals that have had some involvement in the past. And just that balance and knowing that a lot of activities under the CRA, you know, can help a lot of different communities, a lot of different kinds of populations, and being able to talk to people and understand what their barriers are to then help design these activities that can be really inclusive for a lot of people. So thank you for kind of highlighting that and talking about that. That was really great. And if we go to the next slide, I'm excited to pass it on to our third local workforce site, to Nadine and Doug at CareerSource Broward. And remember, if you have questions for our presenters, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We'll leave a few minutes at the end to get to those. So Nadine, I will pass it to you.
Good afternoon, Mahika. Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. Like the other two workforce board reps said, I want to thank the Lead Center for this project, this pilot project, setting our sights. When CareerSource Broward, we first decided to form our pilot leadership team, we weren't sure who should actually be on the team, and the makeup of it actually changed a little bit. But we basically brought on a board member. We thought that was important to have the buy-in of the board. We also brought in our one-stop partners, the county, which is our community service block grant partner, as well as our friends and partners from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So we basically had a couple of goals here. We want to enhance and strengthen the financial service career pathway with bank partnership, focusing obviously on LMI, people of color, and people with disabilities. We also wanted to increase the financial capability of adults with low and moderate incomes. We serve one county, but we have 3 centers. It's a huge county down here in the Fort Lauderdale area, north of Miami. We really wanted to focus on, enhancing our financial workshops, because currently in our 3 centers, we already offer 2 financial workshops. But it was important for us to kind of increase the financial capability of adults. And we definitely got more buy-in once we had an actual banker actually do that for us. So that's how we approach it. We were interested in career pathways. How do we go from teller to account manager to mortgage broker on up? And also, how do we increase the financial knowledge down here? Like I'm sure Albany and Michigan, we have a really big issue that relates to affordable housing. So that is at the forefront of our local community. So the timing of this turned out to be really, really good. Next slide, please. So what did we do? We developed new partnerships. Our initial team, we didn't have somebody from the bank on initiative. And as our leadership team grew and we realized we really need somebody from there, we decided to add somebody from the Florida Prosperity Partnership on our team. And they connected us with a local bank on coalition with the city of Lauderdale, which is one of the most distressed communities. In fact, one particular zip code, 33311, has the most children living in poverty in all of Florida. So that was a good connection for us to kind of make. And for those underbanked and unbanked customers, which we have very, very, very many of them. And our new bank relationship included JP Morgan Chase Bank and Locality Bank. Locality Bank's president actually joined our board, and JP Morgan Chase Bank is the bank that we are working with right now. As a matter of fact, they just finished their 5-part series where they come into our center and they basically have workshops. And we kind of decided, based on what the success coaches told us, what workshops would be the most interesting. And I personally have actually attended 4 of the 5 workshops, and they're very interactive. We have very good feedback. We didn't bring the feedback like our friends in Michigan, but very interactive. The customers like it a lot, especially the one on budgeting, because they actually had budget 1 and then they had budget 2. And so the following week or the following 2 weeks when they came back, they were asking questions like, did you follow your budget? So that was really interesting. But one of the things I did want to say, and I think it came up actually with somebody else, is the relationships we formed with the bank regulators here in Florida from the FDIC and OCC were very, very helpful. They really opened doors for us in terms of even helping us to get that partnership with JP Morgan Chase Bank, because they were able to advise us, this is how you approach a bank. This is why a bank might be suspicious of you if they've never heard of your organization. And they really guided us really well in how to do outreach, because cold calling was not working for us. So that I would say to anybody listening out there, getting those partnerships, very, very helpful. And again, they're going to continue to support us as we try and expand our partnerships, not just with JP Morgan Chase Bank or Locality Bank, but with other banks in the future, especially with the career pathway, because we really kind of want to tie that in with our ITA, because it definitely is an occupation in demand. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Doug, who's going to tell you a little bit more.
Hello, thank you. Appreciate that, Nadine. And thank you, everybody. So I'll cover 2 broad areas here. One is the results that we've gotten, and the other is kind of our next steps and what we're going to be doing next. So could we go to the next slide? Thank you. So first, as Nadine was mentioning already, we've been able to establish actually 2 very successful relationships right now, one with Chase Bank. And the nice thing there is, of course, their background, their cachet, as it relates to financial services and financial education. They do a lot of work in South Florida. one of the people that we actually met with, she's posting all over in LinkedIn and about the different places they're partnering with. So it's great to have them on board and to be working with them. We actually have a number of workshops that we offer our customers, and some of those involve budgeting and financial issues, but to certainly have a bank behind you and offering that just adds so much to the mix. So we're really pleased with that, to have them on board and working with us. And like Nadine said, she had been to four of the five workshops, and it's interesting how successful they are, because she used to have a Corolla. She drove in last week with a Lamborghini. So there's something going well with those workshops. That's not true. We have actually another relationship as well with a local bank. Locality Bank is their name, and they're on our board right now. So that's great to have. Again, it's a different perspective. We have not had a bank or a financial institution on our board. We have other industries. We have tech, we've had healthcare and all, but this is nice to have that industry now as part of our board and the team that kind of oversees the direction we take and what we're doing. So we're really pleased with that as well. And one of the things too, I want to say one of our partners locally is a group called, and Nadine, correct me if I have this wrong. I want to say Bank On is one of them. And there's a gentleman there who was part of our team, and he was very instrumental. He's been in the banking industry for a number of years. He was Patrick, I don't remember his last name now, but very instrumental in connecting us with different banks. And some of those, didn't go through, didn't work, and that's fine. But some of them did. And of course, as we mentioned with Chase and all, it's been a phenomenal relationship. One of the things we did, and particularly Nadine did a lot of research on this, was the resource map of financial capability services and resources here in Broward County. And I think this was a bit of a surprise for us. There's so much out there, but a lot of times this kind of information flies under the radar. People don't market it necessarily in the best way, and so you don't know all that's around us. But we do have in Broward County a phenomenal number of resources that deal with financial education and prepping individuals to manage their monies, to save their monies, and so forth. So that was something that was a real nice outcome for us, and a good positive check mark for our area. We also, excuse me, have the developed a financial capability. Wow, this is a mouthful. Financial Capability Services Desk. I'm sorry. And that can be used, which actually came out of that resource map that was developed. And that is available now to our Career Center staff, that they can use to refer individuals to different places, depending on the need. Financial education, budgeting, home ownership, whatever it is, they now have a resource they can use to refer people. And of course, alongside that, having Chase giving these workshops, as Nadine said, they've done 5. They'll be back for another round. And so we want to continue that and keep that going. So together, that's a nice two-pronged approach to help individuals, let them know of what's available to them, let our clients kind of, again, strengthen their financial capability. And then we completed a pitch that Nadine and I worked on, that the OCC and the, I'm blanking out on the other organization, FDIC, that they helped us develop, or the community reinvestment folks, that we can use to approach banks. So it's given us a bit of an education on how to polish ourselves for that industry. Again, if you want to talk to us about hospitality, marine, aviation, we've got that covered. But the financial services industry was new to us in that respect. It's not an industry we'd engaged much in. So it was nice to have that kind of mentoring, if you will, by those groups to help us know, okay, here's how we want to approach banks when we want to go ahead and build some relationships and do more. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so some next steps. So we want to enhance the leadership team membership, and as we had about 5 or 6 partners locally, and we want to keep that going, even if it's on an informal basis, because working now with Bank On, for example, and with some of the other groups, that's so important as we're looking to move forward. We do have already relationships with vocational rehab right here in Broward County. We have relationships. We actually have a program manager for that works with individuals with disabilities, and it's a whole program we have. Take It to Work, and so we already have some of these relationships and connections established within our own ranks here. But being able to expand that to beyond with Voc Rehab and with Bank On, particularly Bank On, because that's, I think, going to be an open door for us to really build further with what we've been doing with the banks. I don't see here. One thing I wanted to mention too is we've been working as well on the career ladder, and it was through connections with Chase, a different department, different area that we were able to connect with, and I'm working on that with them to kind of build something out to give a picture to those that might want to actually take that career in financial services. So I want to add that in there. And we want to focus on these 3 partnership opportunities that you see here. So obviously, 1, continue building those bank relationships and the training. So we're going to keep that going, and we would not at all mind expanding that to other banks as well, just to again kind of cast a wider net and pull others in. Being able to add work experience, training, and placement for individuals with low and moderate incomes. In this area, wherever we can, we want to expand it. We know right now there's been some shrinkage of the industry in our region, but we're keeping those doors open, and thankfully they have been open. They're not saying no at all, but I think some of them are just trying to kind of feel the lay of the land as it stands right now. And then acquiring no or low interest loans, again, something that we might be able to benefit from, partnering with banks to service our low and moderate income zip code areas like Nadine was referring to. We would love to be able to work with banks to be able to do that and improve some of our assets and our resources to serve these people. Our central, we have 3 locations in the county. By the way, Broward County is, again, I guess this is relative, but we are a small compared to Miami-Dade and Palm Beach County geographically, but it's the 2nd largest county here in South Florida. It's almost 2 million people in population. So it's a sizable county population-wise. And so we have 3 centers, which does a good job of covering the geographic area. And our central office particularly is a target that is near Lauderdale, as Nadine referred, and some of the other low and moderate income areas. So that would be a perfect target to partner with a bank and reach out and to be able to provide these services, not only financial education, but then reach out with helping them with home ownership and other services like that could move them up on the path to financial independence. So that would be something we really want to key in on. And of course, that also results in the opportunity for small business growth and development here in the central part of the county. So that covers what we've been doing. We're really excited about it. We want to thank all of you, Doug, and the whole group of people, because it's been a good experience for us. And so, Mahika, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nadine and Doug. I especially appreciated how you talked about formulating your outreach kind of narrative. As a cold calling, Nadine, you mentioned wasn't quite working. And so thinking about how you outreach to banks and kind of what story you want to tell. And then Doug, to your point about pulling in different perspectives across industries and bringing that expertise to kind of help support these activities. I thought that was a really great thing to highlight. Next slide, please. We've seen that through the CRA, banks can engage in activities that support individuals who have low and moderate incomes in attaining financial stability and workforce success. And the learnings from this pilot will inform the creation of new CRA-related resources. And the Lead Center will offer events and engage in activities to disseminate, promote, and scale up promising practices. So to that end, ODEP and the Lead Center are offering free support and technical assistance to workforce boards that wish to develop or expand bank partnerships. If your workforce system is interested in this TA or interested in staying connected with the Lead Center in this activity, I've dropped a link in the chat to a Google form. If you could fill this out, then we can contact you and be able to work with you in the future. Next slide, please. We are at the hour, so unfortunately we don't have any time for Q&A, but we do have presenters' contact information available for anyone that would like to follow up. Thank you for submitting your questions, and hopefully you'll be able to get in touch with our presenters and have some conversations with them. Next slide, please. If you want to learn more about the CRA and how to engage banks in this work, we have several resources for you to peruse. All the slides and the links will be available after this webinar. As Doug mentioned, we have a how-to guide coming soon. This guide provides a blueprint to help workforce development boards establish stronger bank partnerships to improve program participants' employment and economic outcomes and benefit the greater community. Next slide, please. If you enjoyed today's webinar, we hope you stay in touch. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that you can follow the Lead Center in a whole lot of different ways. We're all over social media. You can sign up for a newsletter, and you can also go check out our website. Next slide. A very, very special thank you to all our presenters, Doug, Amanda, Brian, Nadine, Doug, and another big thank you to all of you in the audience for coming out today. We hope to share with you again during upcoming Lead Center webinars. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.